G'day guys, I hope that you're doing well, and I know for a lot of people it has been a very tough few days. There's been a lot of trauma, a lot of grief, and a lot of uncertainty. And today I just wanted to do an open video discussing with you some of the thoughts and feelings that I have towards this situation that aren't really shaking away. The situation to do with the brutal, bloody murder of Charlie Kirk. And it's not that I'm sad about this. I don't really know how to feel. Something just feels off. Something feels hollow. Something feels empty. And I can't really put my finger on it. And I've just been doing what I typically do when there's something like this, is I write things down, and I've been doing a fair bit of writing, and I just want to present it to you today about this concern that I have and almost what I'm seeing and observing, this death of the moderate, not death of a moderate, but a death of the moderate just in our society, and me trying to break this down and me speaking with people who I consider on the left, people I consider on the right, people I see as centre, and how I think this is changing them. And it's weird for me because I have friends all across the spectrum and people who I don't actually know where they sit on the political spectrum writing to me. Someone actually stopped me who I know and explained how they're feeling about this. And it's really weird, and I think there's been a lot of people who have shifted in their political views and outlook recently, but where does that go? That also concerns me. Now, Charlie Kirk. I didn't watch Charlie Kirk. I didn't follow Charlie Kirk. It was impossible not to see him on TikTok or Instagram Reels or any of that when it got millions and millions of views. Of course, I was aware of who he was, but I didn't consume him by the bucket load. And from a lot of what I did see, I disagreed with as well. I agreed with a lot. I agree with having open discussion, and I think a university is the best place to do this. It's a place for academic freedom and exploring, but on the other side, I sometimes feel it a bit unfair when you've got students going up against then people beyond their age bracket, who are then maybe have more life experience, but at the same time, that is part of the whole learning experience. But what I'm trying to say is that I wasn't some massive Charlie Kirk guy. I don't really follow that culture war stuff that much, but just something feels off following this. Something just feels off, and I can't put my finger on it. And I think Mr. Theo Von explained this really well yesterday in similar non-explanatory terms of what is this hollow, empty feeling. It's not a stage of grief or trauma. I'm not upset by it. It's just a concerned feeling that I can't shake. I was speaking to a friend at dinner about this last night, and maybe it was the sheer brutality on video of what we saw and people having a visceral reaction to this. And as someone like myself who is an atheist, the finalness of death is always very difficult to get your head around. I remember when I first saw a loved one dead, it's like a body vassal and they're not there anymore. But the brutality, I don't know if it's that for me, because I report on war. I see brutality on video all the time. I've been at the front line in many countries. I've seen brutality. I've seen death. I've seen horrible, horrible things. It was a fairly big rifle Charlie got shot with. It went through and through his neck and you see blood. I've seen guys chewed up by much bigger machine guns and the bodies there. And that still sticks with me. And that's why with some of the things in my life I'm very open about, I still see, and I think I will always see, professional help to talk about certain things. But I don't know if it is that. Maybe it's the shooter's physical disconnection, that he's 100 and something meters away. It's the disconnection of that and the brutality of what we saw, and a figure that people looked up to that was in what was meant to be a safe space for academic freedom. And people go, well, he was a fascist, he was a this, he was that. I think so many people, they don't actually know the definition of these words either. They don't actually know what that means. But a lot of people say, well, free speech is not free of consequence. And I 100% agree with that. But the consequence is not violence. The consequence is not getting shot and killed in front of your loving wife and your children. That's not the consequence. When people say freedom of speech is not free of consequences, no. The consequence is someone can prove you wrong, that you can't shut down their speech, and they can't shut down your speech, and they can prove you wrong, they can make you look like an idiot. But it's not what we saw. That's not how that is meant to operate at all. And I do think that human beings, we are exposed to so much brutality on the internet now. I'm interested to see where this goes in decades to come. But as I said, something just feels like off, and it feels like everything has changed. It feels like there was a before this and an after this, that like there's an end of an epoch, and that end of the epoch may be the death of the moderate. I think the death of the moderate left occurred with the spicy flu, maybe around that time, maybe before, but the death of the moderate right maybe was 3 days ago. That's sort of how I'm feeling it, and the birth of further radicalization potentially. And speaking to people, and that's one of the big things I do, is just speak to as many people as I can. I'm seeing from memes with 1 million likes and people I speak to and all this, that people saying, I feel like seeing that was the point at which I was radicalized. For me, that was the Archduke Franz Ferdinand moment. That was it. That was when I'm not open to discussion. I'm not open to debate with you, these people anymore, that I'm just shutting down from all of that. Maybe that end of the epoch there, region of time, maybe that's why everything feels so weird, and waiting for, I guess, what comes next. And I don't see a way out. I don't know how this is going to play out and move forward. I don't know what happens now. Maybe nothing happens. Maybe not, but it just feels like if it's not this, it's going to be something else, where things start happening and that it's going to be horrible, and the very foundations that things are built on is so under pressure at the moment. And the people that are celebrating this, who don't see that this is a bad thing, I don't think they understand that foundational element of freedom of speech, and that the consequences is not this. You go into, and that's what he was doing. Now, I don't agree with everything on this. I'm sure if Charlie and I had a discussion, there's plenty of things from religion through to abortion through to Israel that we would disagree on, and plenty of things we may agree on. I don't know exactly his standing, but I don't think a lot of people are grasping the foundational elements of what has been impinged on at the moment. And there's this idea of this, almost like we're at the mercy of foreign figures, unknown silent figures of which we're at the mercy of at the moment. We don't know who or what that is or are. We don't know where this goes from here. And I'm not meaning spiritual, I'm meaning just in societal as well. And this, we don't know what happens. There's so much, and I think this is why it's summed up in this era of time ending. It's not just this killing and so brutality against freedom of speech and against someone who people loved or people hated. It's that we're on the edge of a great state war. We have Trump tweeting today about Russia. We have Europe, the European Union talking about Russia. We have where China is sitting and India is sitting and all of this. It feels like we're on the edge of a non-localized war. Like the war that is raging in Europe is still localized. The war in the Middle East is still localized. It's not spread its wings, its fangs out to what it could become, but it feels like we're on the edge of that we've had the killing while we're on the edge of war, and all the disagreement about that. The seemingly on this point of no return event horizon being crossed with artificial intelligence. And we don't know where that goes. Some are very optimistic, some are incredibly pessimistic. Some say it will lead to all these freedoms, some say it will lead to our eventual extinction. We're at the mercy of algorithms and how people are radicalised by these, how people have their heads filled with all these sort of ideas from just this algorithm, of which is the algorithm itself was beholden to play into the worst of people, and that AI pushes that. And it's not only the Silicon Valley guys who are pushing that around, its own AI is now in touch. Like, if the AI is driving the algorithm and the algorithm is then driving human nature and human response, where do humans fit into that? We have the Epstein Island thing, where it seems on the surface like all these elites are in this blackmailing pedophile ring that's being hidden up. It seems like it's being run by foreign intelligence. And I think for me personally, then on top of all of this, on top of all this uncertainty, all these puppet master somewhere, I have my tumour. And I think, I was breaking this down late last night as I was writing and thinking about this, was in under 3 months, I have an MRI in my head with the scar here, if you're not aware I'm talking about. And that could go from it hasn't grown and, you continue living, to it has grown and you're gone. Like, all of that, I think so much of that uncertainty, both in what I'm seeing in people and observing in myself, this is just moving so much into this hollow, empty feeling of the future that is so uncertain at the moment. And what we don't know what happens next, but where I see my concern in this, Jung describes it well when he says, knowing your darkness is the best method of dealing with the darkness of other people. And looking internally, seeing that you don't become the monster, but knowing the monster of which you could become given circumstance, you could see how far some people could go. And we see this in groups. I've never met anyone individually who I consider, even like people who do bad things, but it's, in everyday life, I haven't talked with anyone, but it's groups. And Nietzsche spoke about this with morality is the herd instinct of the individual. And if you get an individual there, they're moral, they're ethical, they're empathetic, but when you have a group, that's where things start to really shift. And we are being put into these groups, whether on purpose or it's just happening. And Nietzsche, he says as well, in individuals, insanity is rare. In groups, parties, nations and epochs, it is the rule. And that's what I'm seeing by these dividing lines being drawn. So much of this death of the moderate, I think, is coming from the lack of sympathy and empathy from people. They're making T-shirts, making memes, blaming this, blaming that, saying he deserved it, however, and the celebration of this as well. And people not understanding that two things can be wrong. Not everything is just to each other. Like, I wholeheartedly say what happened to Charlie Kirk is murderous. It is wrong. It should not happen. It should not happen to him. It should not happen to far-right figures. It should not happen to far-left figures. And I also would say what we see happening in Gaza is not okay. That is wrong. And I was looking for something I'd read that I guess breaks this down a little bit. And I like short snippets of quotes from philosophy to try and get my head around it as someone who's not as talented with the control of English that these had. And Esramus in 1509, he wrote, "The less talent they have, the more pride, vanity, and arrogance they have. All these fools however, find other fools to applaud them. And that is what I see so much in this like online space of these people who are lacking talent, who are not knowledgeable, won't add nuance to what is happening, won't look at it from other sides and how people may see this, but fools will find fools to applaud them. And then now we have this idea that competence is directly related to your follower count. And in a popular system, not only of government, but a popular system of voices online as well, that I won't say her name, but someone who is a minor celebrity in Australia, her word is taken with more value than someone who may have studied politics for 5 decades. And it goes to what Nietzsche said about the surest way to corrupt a youth is instruct him to hold in a higher esteem those who think alike than those who think differently. And I think about that all the time, and I try and see things through. But now if you try and even listen to someone who thinks differently, and we see this, that Charlie thought differently to the guy that murdered him. And people are holding the murderer in esteem because they didn't like this other figure. And it's so much of that the corrupting of the youth is just to create these echo chambers of what you want or like to hear. And I spoke about this the other day with like relative truths. There's truths out there that I don't like, but you need to be legitimately realistic about it. And this is my truth, our truth, compared to the truth. And the problem that I see is so much of this now is it's been relativized to such a degree that my truth or your truth is actually held more so than the truth. And that to take into another account of how anyone else feels is seen almost as extremist or as a blatant attack on who you are yourself. And sort of breaking down this idea of I just don't know how to think about this, that hollow feeling is I sit in front of a whole bunch of books. I sit in front of books by like Christopher Hitchens and Richard Dawkins and Sam Harris. And there's this part of me at the moment that feels like reading the Bible and going to church. Not in a scientific sense. I don't believe there's a guy in the clouds. I don't believe there's the puppet master up there. Or spiritually, but almost like culturally of the foundation. I've never had that feeling ever in my life whatsoever at all. And that is something which is weird. I was with a friend at dinner last night. He's probably watching this. And he said the same thing. He said, I've been a lifelong atheist or leaning to anti-theism. And I feel like going to a church to pay respect to the foundation of this. And that's so, I don't know. This new orthodoxy of shutting down ideas or speech and violence being the justifiable used tool because you've built as your truth that this person, this idea is such a danger, that it's such a danger that violence is then necessary. And it goes back to my last video on this about if people honestly believe that this figure was I had people all through my inbox being like, yeah, well, this was equivalent to Go Bells. And I'm like, what do you do? You're relativizing truths. That's not true at all. Charlie was on the right. If you actually take in the spectrum of right, incredibly moderate, if you actually know the spectrum of right, if you actually know the spectrum of conservative ideas, if you know that spectrum of conservative ideas, and Charlie is not the nth degree. The nth degree is what you see in some areas in Europe in the 20th century or many areas in Islam at the moment. That is the nth degree. That's not correct. That's not. He's not there. But this orthodoxy of now that the way to do this is through violence and threats. And I had so many people. There's a lot of people, creators, contact each other and talk, and other creators who are like, I am now too scared to speak out against some of these things because this may happen to me. And my opinion is that is the exact opposite of what we should be doing. Because Charlie would have given if he knew he was going to die, I believe he still would have walked out there and done that. And I've been considering recently doing some more public stuff and talking to people. And all of this is coming from people that just don't understand that people think differently. People have different experiences. And this is this idea of that there's nothing is binary, but then your ideas have to fit into one or another binary that can't go across multiple different spectrums of this. And again, Nietzsche, who I think in this time has been, I read a lot of Nietzsche anyway, and I share a lot of ideas, but in times like this, I think someone like him really encapsulates all of it well, of you should not be afraid of someone who has a library of books and reads many books. You should fear someone who only has one book, considers it sacred, but has never read it. And that doesn't mean a physical book, but this means someone who doesn't actually understand what these extremes are of politics, who buys into all that orthodoxy, will protect that orthodoxy, regardless of what it is, rather than trying to see things from multiple different perspectives and get an idea on it, or be able to put yourself in the shoes of someone of which you disagree with. A lot of people hate me because I simply say all soldiers in war are still at one point young boys. They are sons, they are fathers, and even if I served in the military, but I see that these young guys, and I say, if I grew up in Afghanistan, I probably would have been in the T-band. And these young guys in Ukraine who are defending, they're just young Ukrainian men. And the same guys, I still have empathy for these guys, these Russian guys who were fighting. You can see how that becomes about that these are still humans at the end of the day. And people hate me for treating humans as humans, even if I vehemently disagree with what is happening. And this may be unpopular, but I have a lot of sympathy for the shooter. I have no sympathy for his actions. I have no sympathy for his action, but I have sympathy for the shooter. There's a few ways of which this may have transpired into what we saw of him taking the few kilograms of trigger pressure to change potentially the world. The current media political environment, it preys on people. It preys on people to try and have massive amounts of agreements and push a narrative. And I see the radicalization of people, especially young people, being done in the media. And my sympathy for this guy who is a murderer, he should go to jail or he should face the death penalty. Yes. But if it was lone acting, I believe he was preyed on and radicalised by the current media and political environment. These environments telling you, sometimes literally, that someone like a Trump is the rise of a Hitler and that should be taken out with all sorts of violence, or a Goebbels, as someone in my inbox tried to say back to me in an argument that I ended up leaving. Now, if it wasn't that, where I have some sympathy is being groomed, radicalised to carry out this atrocious event by an intelligence agency. Now, what people don't understand is ex-intelligence agency does not put a shooter from their agency on a roof often to shoot Y. That's not how those operate. You have handlers. What then occurs is you find someone who is radicalised or could then be further radicalised, you groom that into them, fill the head with ideas, all of this, all the things I'm accusing the media of doing, seeing this person as a disposable, useful idiot to then carry out this, and then you make it possible for that to then happen. So if it was that side that is intelligence is in this somewhere, I don't see him as an operator of that intelligence agency. I see him as a useful idiot who has been groomed by that to carry out this event. But people also don't understand with this idea, and we talk about this in war, so maybe it's not very common in the political theatre. We talk about decapitation strikes of leaders' voices. This is why it doesn't work, because Hitler was the voice, but he wasn't the movement. If you decapitate the leader of the system still exists. Likely it will be replaced by someone who is more drinking the Kool-Aid and more hardcore. This is why we don't see effort taken to take out someone, say Putin. He would be replaced likely with someone like Medvedev, but the system is still there. It's well known in military circles. It's not a one-man war. That doesn't exist, and the right or the left is not one-man movements. It's not Charlie, or it's not Trump, or it's not Vance, or it's not the figures on the left. It's not Harris or this or that. It doesn't work like that. The movement has to be then... The whole movement has to be changed, not the leader. That's not how you change an ideology or how people see ideologies. How many high-value targets of the leadership of the Taliban, of Hamas, of any of these groups has been taken out, and it still exists in a more powerful form? I said in this a few times, the death of the moderate. The replacement for Mr. Kirk, who's still part of just the system of the conservative Republican in America. The replacement, the speak of this decapitation, if you will be Nick Fuentes. Nick Fuentes is a significantly more formidable force than Charlie Kirk. Significantly more. He has a message as straight as an arrow, with very little shift. His tongue is lethal. It's razor-edged. It's merciless. This is exactly what I'm meaning about the moderate. You've seen this shift. And I think in America, there are very few moderate voices anymore. That people, maybe moderate voices, but moderate people. And a lot of these have shifted to everything just stepped a position further down the line. And it may step again, and look at how these far right, we have Milo Yiannopoulos coming back, we have other figures growing, and that there was that voice that was a voice of the typical ordinary right system. And now you're having these other ones who are gaining significantly more traction. Now, again, Nick is not someone who I watch a lot of other than clips that pop up on my Instagram or TikTok or that someone sends me. But agree with him or not, as an orator, he is sharp as a whip. And you see the amount of people saying his live stream the other day who are all on board with that. And I will say, I actually credit Nick a lot in some of that live stream for asking people and telling people not to react violently, not to react as the way that it has gone the other way. And so far, we have not seen that. I don't even know what this video was about. I just took some notes as I could, and this uncertain, concerned, hollow, empty feeling that I get. It's not even a sadness or what. I guess it's not the unknown, and we're in such a period of unknown as we went over as a whole, as America. And you will have players who will take advantage and exploit that. You'll have the media exploit it. You'll have politics exploit it. You'll have foreign intelligence agencies exploit it. You have people scared to speak up about things because of this. Not only to speak against the left, people are scared maybe to speak against the right. Maybe they're scared to speak against Israel. Maybe they're scared to speak about Russia or Ukraine. And this is not the system, a foundation that America was built on and America has been prosperous in. We need to do all that we can to protect speech, because what happens when you limit this speech? You know what happens is you pigeonhole into speech, and that is exactly how you end up with these extremes. Especially on a fucking university. Universities have massive issues. The privatisation of a lot of this, the parasitic nature that relative truths have got into, even like STEM, is of huge concern. Legends, I hope that you're really well. I'm really well. I'm fine. Don't worry about me. Talking with so many people, there's just so many people that are feeling like weird about this. And talking to my partner, she's like, I don't even know who this bloke was, but I feel so weird. Legends, you look after yourself. And we will all need to look after each other as well. Thank you for being with me if you're at this point in the video. I'll speak to you tomorrow. Thank you. Bye-bye.